If you're a small business owner looking to grow or expand your business, check out OnDeck Business Loans. OnDeck offers business loans online from $5,000 to $500,000, and their simple application process only takes 10 minutes. Unlike banks, they'll give you a decision quickly, and funding is as fast as one day. Get a free consultation with an OnDeck loan advisor. Visit ondeck.com/podcast.
This is the Breakfast Leadership Podcast. Boundaries or burnout, you make the choice. Here's your host, Michael Levitt. Welcome to the Breakfast Leadership Podcast. It's Michael here, and today I've got a really awesome guest, Larry Yatch. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Michael. It's great to be here.
Great to have you here. You are a former Navy SEAL. Now, how does that work? I mean, how did you choose that path? And you work with leaders today, and you're a leadership expert. And today, I really want to dive into all of the synergies and how that role prepared you for what you do today.
Yeah, totally. For me, the start was not all that exciting in that it was Tom Cruise that got me on the path. I saw Top Gun in third grade. I remember leaving the movie theater 100% convinced I was going to go to the Naval Academy and be a fighter pilot, and literally started working towards that goal in third grade. And then in seventh grade, I found out about the Navy SEALs. A friend of mine got me a sweatshirt. I think he was in Virginia Beach, and he got the sweatshirt and it said Navy SEALs on it. This would have been in the late 80s. No one knew what a Navy SEAL was, right? It wasn't common knowledge, much less a seventh grader. And so he got the sweatshirt simply because it said Navy on it and had a cool logo. And so I went straight to the library and found a book called The Men with Green Faces, which was a Vietnam era SEAL book. And by the end of the book, I was convinced fighter pilots were pansies and I needed to be a Navy SEAL. So that was the start of it.
Yeah, I remember being, at a young age, and I wasn't familiar with what the SEALs did. But then, obviously, now it's fairly well known, at least from a public standpoint.
For sure.
Some of the things you do. I know there's some things that happen behind the scenes that need to stay behind the scenes in order to protect our interest, our country, and those that we fight for and serve. But that's an interesting journey that you all the way back at early age that you wanted to serve in the armed forces and drive that. Now, were people in your family in the service before, or?
Yeah, my dad. So one of the big driving themes, like the real purpose behind it, there's a couple of them. And one of the biggest ones was that my dad grew up on the streets in Brooklyn, in New York City in the 50s and early 60s. And he got in trouble with the law a number of times. Eventually, I think he was 19 or 20. The judge said, you can go to jail or you can go into the Marine Corps. And so he went into the Marine Corps, and it absolutely turned his life around. He ended up having a hugely successful law career, political career. And we knew, I have a twin sister. My sister and I knew from, as young as I could remember, that it's only based on the fact that we live in this country and that our lives were what they were. And ultimately, he was also so grateful and owed so much to the change that the service provided him. And so I grew up with a sense that being a citizen wasn't a right. It was something that you had to earn, and all the gifts that we have in this great country and all the opportunities we have, being able to serve to earn them is a good thing. And so that was one of the driving forces. The other thing is, if you look at me now, you would never know because I'm 6'3", 200 plus pounds. But I was a really skinny little dorky kid growing up in the city of Pittsburgh. And if it had a ball or a team, I was useless at it. And that meant that I was bullied quite badly from second grade through fifth grade, and again in high school. And definitely would have been voted least likely to be a Navy SEAL out of high school. And that concept that someone can use their power their ability to influence change to hurt someone that doesn't have it, right? That's bullying. And the opposite of bullying is leadership, using your power, your ability to influence change to help someone that doesn't have that power. And ultimately what SEALs do are we hunt and kill the worst bullies in the world. So, well, or capture, I guess I should say. Either way, for me as a little bullied kid that wanted to serve, wanted to test myself, because for years people told me I couldn't do, I was weak, I wasn't athletic, I wasn't smart, all of those things, what's the hardest thing in the world? And it was more to prove it to myself than to them, to be able to fulfill my sense of obligation to service and to go hunt the worst bullies in the world. Sign me up.
It's a wonderful story, and I love the fact that you said you did it for you and to prove to yourself and not to others, because I think that's where many misstep is like, well, I'm going to do this and I'm going to prove them wrong. Well,
good luck with that, especially in SEAL training. Like, that's good. You'll last for about 6 hours on the first day. Maybe you might make it to the end of the first week, but the instructors are definitely going to make you see and know that whatever you have to prove to someone else is not worth the pain and suffering they're going to put you through.
Exactly. Yeah, no, it's not for those that, are outwardly focused on, revenge or, retribution or things like that. It's like, no, it's a within. And, the segue from your time in serving, and how long did you serve by the check?
So another thing is I did reach my goal of going to the Naval Academy. So I went straight from high school into the Naval Academy from 94 to 98, which was, especially with the topics we're going to talk about today, critical for, at least while I was there, I think the Academy celebrated its 150th year anniversary. And so for 150 years, this school has been systematically building leaders for the Navy, and doing that in a very organized and structured process with a lot of history and tradition and a lot of effectiveness. And that really opened up my eyes to the concept that leadership isn't a trait. Every one of us that showed up there, our plebe, first day of our plebe summer, were less of a leader, right? Less effective of a leader than when we graduated. And that isn't something that was just inside of us. That was something that can be developed, which really changed my perspective on leadership. And from there, so graduated in 98, went straight into SEAL training, got through it straight through, which is a good thing because it's an extremely painful and hard process. So extending that by having to repeat anything sucks. And then in the spring of 1999, I chose to go to SEAL Team 3, which was at the time responsible for the Middle East. And as we know from history, in the late 90s, nothing was going on. And so I figured if anything was to happen where we got to do our job, it was going to be in the Middle East. And as we know from history, I chose correctly. And so I spent, at that point, would have been 9 years, so 10 years total in operating as an officer in Southeast Asia and the Middle East. And then I was injured a number of times, eventually through a botched back surgery. After a severe injury, my surgeon came in and said, hey, sorry, your SEAL career is over. And so about 9 years into my service, and at the time I was not ready to be done. I still had some stuff I wanted to do in the community. I was really lost at that point. My entire purpose since third grade was taken away. And luckily my fiance at the time, my wife now, my business partner as well, she's impressive in her own right. She's got a master's in international security and anti-terrorism from Georgetown and was working in the intelligence fields. And she was smart enough to see that leadership, and which is ultimately what I did as an officer in the teams, right? My job was to manage my amazing SEALs into success. Leadership and teaching are very similar. And she knew that the unique skill sets I had, knowledge and experience, as well as the history of leading extremely high functioning teams in the world's worst environments and having an extremely high success rate, combined with her ability to interact and interrelate with people, we could continue to protect the country just doing it through education. So we started our first training company in 2007 and have run 4 different training companies in different domains over the last, 11, 12 years. And ultimately where we spent the most time is in the last 7 years working on team performance in kind of mid-market companies. So making senior managers more effective, both for their managers, right? The CEOs or the directors of the company, and most importantly for those that they manage underneath them. So that's what we've been doing for the last 7 years.
Well, and I see the synergies between, the leadership role and during your time of service in the armed forces and what you're doing now. And yes, unfortunate for sure, because, and that happens, and you see that in life where you say, okay, this is my career, this is what I'm going to be, and this is what I'm going to do. And then a health related matter takes you out of the game. You see it in professional sports. You see it sometimes in leadership roles where, executives, burning the candle at both ends, and then they burn out and, end up, having health issues, and then they can no longer continue in that role. And all of a sudden they are in this, okay, who am I? What am I going to do now? Because I wasn't planning on being done with this at this particular time and frame.
Right. So do you mind if I pause you for a second?
Go for it. Yeah.
Interesting. I found one of my strengths, right? What enables me to be so effective at what I do is I'm extremely precise in my language, both the language I use, but more importantly, when I listen to someone. And you said a word that was very interesting. You said be, like when it comes to the individual, right? Who they be versus who they are. And there's a big distinction between the two, right? When you see like, do I see myself as a SEAL? Like I am a SEAL. And if that's the case, if I'm not operating as a SEAL, where's my identity versus do I fulfill the role of a SEAL? Am I being a SEAL? Right? Two different things and two different perspectives. If I was stuck in the concept that I am a SEAL, and unless I operate as one, I can't actually fulfill my own identity, that's where I could have fallen into depression and who knows what, definitely lost. But the concept that I can embody what it means to be a SEAL, right? I can show up in the world in the behaviors of a SEAL while still being in a different role. That's then very powerful. And that message to individuals, if you look at yourself, especially in those areas of change in your life, and you identify yourself with your role, meaning your role defines who you are, there's a lot of danger in that. Danger in that if you make a mistake, what does that mean for you? Another one is a lot of times it can cause a lot of ego, right? Because if I'm questioned, especially in a leadership role, if I'm questioned, well, then you're questioning who I am at the core, which as a SEAL, you can imagine we can't have ego. Right? If I have ego and I think I'm right or I know I'm right, that risks my life and everyone else's life, and they beat any ego out of you in SEAL training. Does that make sense?
Oh, completely. And I'm glad you highlighted that, because again, I think, and I see it a lot with the people that I work with, they unfortunately identify their roles as who they are and not something that they do. And it definitely can create some dynamics, especially if they have a sudden change or the markets change and that role is no longer available. You name it. It really creates some challenges. So one of the things we talked about in the pre-show was leadership and management, and how leaders and management are basically missing the boat and not
hence the Navy pond I like. Yeah, exactly. I mean, they're missing the ship for sure.
Exactly. And
it's the wrong ship.
Yeah. They climb up there, they go up and it's like, wait a minute, I don't recognize any of these. Who are these people? And you're exactly. Like, whoops. And that's something you definitely want to avoid if you are in, I don't know, a war-torn area. You want to make sure you get on the right ship. I'm just for
with
pro tip.
the right team, right?
That's
Like
true.
that. Oh my God, is that critical?
Yeah.
Right?
So talk about that.
Let me ask you, what's the difference, the core primary difference between, let's say, Bill Gates and the homeless guy on the corner?
The core difference. We're not talking about, financial dollars or things like that.
That's a consequence of the difference, correct?
Yeah, okay. My hunch is, and I could be wrong on this, is choices.
Okay, again, consequence, right?
Mm-hmm.
Choices are consequence of ways of being, of ways you interact with the world, just like money is. So when it comes to ways of being, skills, capabilities, what makes the homeless guy end up on the corner, and what enables Bill Gates to end up where he is? I'll give you one more guess.
I'm brainstorming here, but I think in being familiar with both types of individuals, they're both human beings, so that's a commonality. Drive again is by choice because you choose.
You could say drive, right? Drive. You could say drive, and I don't. Again, this to me is a second order thing for me. And please tell me if you think I'm wrong. The core difference that enables one to be in one place and the other to be in the opposite place is the ability to coordinate action with others. I'll just let that sit with you for a second.
Yeah, because Bill did not get to where he is by doing it himself.
No, and I don't know how I've interacted with some people that are struggling in life that are geniuses. Absolute geniuses, right? So it isn't intelligence, but what if you look at some of the homeless people that are in the worst case, they can't coordinate action with themselves between their thoughts, their emotions, their bodies, their energy, right? They're that disorganized, and much less coordinate action with someone else. Oftentimes, they can't even coordinate action with people that are trying to help them. Whereas Bill Gates not only can coordinate action effectively with many people, he has the ability and skill to create organization structures, teams where he enables others to coordinate action with others effectively on 10, 15, 20, 30 layers deep. And that's what enables the success. And so when I look at as an individual, especially when you look at, I'll ask this question: is there any way in life to live, to just stay alive without coordinating action with others?
No, because unless you wouldn't be able to.
You wouldn't have clothes. You couldn't have a car. I mean, you couldn't. Yeah. You couldn't have support, family, eat anything, right?
Yeah, so, exactly. Even if if you said, okay, I'm going to live on this farm, well, you have to go get the seeds and you have to go acquire the livestock and all of that. And they don't.
You got naked and afraid, right? You got those guys that go out with no clothes, no nothing, out in the middle of the bush. One, someone brought them there, right? They didn't just get there. And even that, they're lucky if they can survive 20 days. And so as a human being, we are so insufficient to survive on this planet by ourselves that we have to coordinate action with others to survive. And the better we are coordinating action with others, the more success we have. That's the same for family. That's the same for business. That's the same for your softball team that you go to play ball with after work. Those that can coordinate action effectively with others are more successful. Now, here's a progression. You aren't allowed to be on high functioning teams if you as an individual can't coordinate action with yourself, right? You can't coordinate action between your thoughts, your feelings, your body, your energy, right? So that's individual performance is the gateway to get onto a high functioning team. If the higher your individual performance, the higher the team you get to be on. You can look at that in the military perspectives. Now, I'm not talking worth as a human being, right? So you look at the entry level grunt in the Army. He and I are worth the same as a human being, right? So I'm not better than him as a human being, but I function better than he does. Therefore, I get to be included on higher functioning teams. And through the BUDGE training process, the basic training process, they weed out people based on individual performance first, ability to coordinate action with the rest of the class second. But if you can't perform at a high level individually, you don't get to be included on high functioning teams. So that's the first step. The second step is the ability to coordinate action on those teams. If I am a high performer individually, but I can't play well with my team, they're going to kick me off the team. So my first progression is to increase my individual capability. Second level is to increase the ability to coordinate action with a team. What happens if I'm on a team and I perform really well at coordinating action with others? What do they do generally?
You start seeing some performance improvements with the team and whatnot.
Yep. And then what? After time, what happens? Inevitably, it drops off unless there's continued growth or just a continual growing. Progress and work. And if there is, eventually you're going to put me in charge, right? I'm going to start to lead. So that progression of my individual performance gives me the gateway onto a high functioning team. Then I have to coordinate action well on a team. When I start to coordinate action really well on the team, I'm going to be recognized for that. And eventually I get put in charge. The reason I get put in charge is I'm making better choices than others around me. And therefore they're going to follow me naturally, right? I don't have to tell them to. They're just saying, look, Larry's making this easier, doing this better. I'm going to follow what he's doing. Now all of a sudden I'm leading. The fourth step is to create the team, right? To actually manage and create the team. So if I follow this progression, I have to have good individual performance first. I get included on a high functioning team. When I function really well on a team, they're going to put me in charge. Others are going to start following what I do. I'm leading. When I lead really well, eventually they're going to give me the opportunity to create and manage my team. And ultimately, and this is the ultimate step, is when I am given the opportunity to create the people that create high functioning teams, right? That's the highest order, right? Then you're creating layers of an organization and you get to, we look at Bill Gates, right? He's got how many layers that he's been able to create the ability for people to effectively coordinate action. I mean, multiple layers, huge success.
Of those 4 levels, where do you see organizations or individuals most likely to misstep, or maybe
leader to manager?
Okay.
That step, right? That step from it, and this is where there's a I think the 180-degree paradigm shift in what it means to manage and lead. And I want to be precise with my language. I don't think I know. I know this because the SEALs operate in a very specific manner relative to leading and managing. And I've worked with hundreds of companies from $5 million a year to multi-billion dollars a year. And the perspective between leadership and management is backwards in every organization I've ever worked with. And it's, I think, one of the core parts that creates the opportunity it creates the opportunity for SEALs to operate so well at such a high level is the difference in distinctions between leading and managing.
And oftentimes too, I find as people rise through the ranks and let's say they're a manager and then all of a sudden they're leading the organization, making that adjustment to that change has been difficult for many. And I'm sure you've seen it too.
Oh yeah. And so what you just said illustrated the reversed perspective, or I'll say backwards, with all due respect, the backwards opinion. So let me just, I'm going to repeat your language, was saying that when you have these managers that eventually lead the organization, so you're putting managers under leaders. Now, this is very, very common, right? This is the common understanding of it. If I was to ask you at the beginning of the call, if unfortunately you pass away next week and you get a headstone and you get a choice between two headstones. It says Michael Levitt, the world's greatest manager, or Michael Levitt, the world's greatest leader. Which one do you pick?
I would pick the leader one.
Yep, as does everyone, right? For sure. I would pick world's greatest manager. And this is how I can prove it. So when you look at what the role of a leader or a manager is outside the role, not just the label, that's where we get to shift this perspective, this paradigm around leadership. I'll use an example. Let's talk about Patton, right? One of the recognized greatest leaders, quote unquote, of all time, especially when it came to managing tanks, right?
Agreed.
Good. Okay. So how many tanks did Patton drive?
As a general, probably none.
Yeah, none. Zero. How many tanks did he specifically say, like, you guys go over there, I'm going to go over here? None.
Exactly.
Right? None. How many rounds did he fire? Zero. Right? None at all. So his job was not to take effective action and evoke effective action in others. That was not his job. His job was to create an environment that supports his leaders in taking effective action and evoking effective action in others. So 3 critical words there. His job is to create, enable, and support leaders. Leaders' jobs are to take effective action, right? Make effective choices, take effective action, and evoke effective action in those around them. A leader's job is to be in the trenches. A manager's job is to stay back, making sure that those leaders in the trenches have clear direction, have all the resources they need, and there's a safety net in case these guys go off track. So ultimately, managers that lead are what we refer to as micromanagers, right? A manager that's in there telling you what to do, and you can use change manager out with CEO, right? A CEO that's in there telling all his senior people, oh, do this, do that, right? Taking effective action and driving effective action in someone else. We don't like those managers. We would not consider them good, quote unquote, leaders. But when you think about the best leader you've ever worked for, odds are that leader wasn't in your business. That leader made sure you were always clear on where you were going, made sure you always had the resources you need, and you knew they had your back. If you messed up, they got you. That's a manager. Whereas a leader's job is to be clear on what I'm supposed to do, make sure I got resources to be able to do it, make sure that you know what I'm up to, right? Reporting information so my manager can redirect me and ask for help when I need it. And those are all action steps, whereas a manager's job is all supporting steps. So ultimately, if I'm in a role where I have a title, I'm a manager, right? CEO is a title. I'm a manager, director of sales, production manager. Those are all management positions. Now, where it gets complicated in those mid-level positions is I have to manage down. I have to create, enable, and support my leaders that are going to get the job done as a production manager. And I have to lead up. I have to lead up to my CEO. I got to make sure they always know where I'm at, what resources I need. I need to make sure that they give me the clarity I need to be able to get the job done. I need to be able to ask them for help where I can. So I'm leading up to my manager. I'm managing down. And then ultimately, I'm going to be following my leaders. Now, if you look at this in the perspective of a SEAL team, imagine coming in, I'm fresh out of the Naval Academy in Bud. So I got 2 years under my belt of training. Never done a damn thing in my life when it comes to SEAL stuff other than training. Show up in a platoon. At that point, being a commissioned officer, the most senior enlisted guy that's got 15 years of combat experience has to call me sir, right? I have positional authority. I have a management responsibility of, the first position I had was 8 SEALs. one of which had close to 18 years of experience. Every one of those SEALs that I had to manage knew to the core of their being that they were stronger than me, smarter than me. Objectively, they had significantly more experience than me. If I went in and told them how to do their job, if I'd led them, how do you think that would have gone?
Probably not as well as you would have hoped.
No, they would have literally beat me up behind the office, because if I came in with that type of ego and tried to step into leading, right, taking effective action. And when I mean take effective action, I'm talking about like tying the boat right, telling them where to go, telling them how to do their job. I'm actually creating significant risk in their lives. And so they won't stand for it. My job is to understand what the overall vision of my commanders are, like what future they want us to create. My job is to make sure to communicate that effectively to my leaders, to make sure that they're empowered and enabled to make effective choices, take effective action, to be able to put safety nets around them to make sure that they don't mess. If they go off the track, no one's going to get hurt, including me. And then most importantly, my job is to follow them. That paradigm shift is insane. Imagine an organization where everyone, all the way down to the most junior person, rank structure, junior person, knows to the core of their being that their job is to lead when they see the most effective choices. Everyone else knows that as soon as someone sees the most effective way, make the most effective choice, they're the leader, I'm the following now. And the manager is constantly focused on direction, support, and safety, and following the experienced leaders. How effective is that organization?
It's going to be an organization that's going to thrive and survive no matter what type of economic changes we see in the world. And I got to contact my tombstone guy and change
exactly
as manager.
I'm sitting here celebrating because that's what I love, because it's a paradigm shift. Like, holy crap. No, I want to be the best manager ever. And if I ever have to lead, if I ever have to get in the trenches, I've screwed up. Like, I have created a void where I didn't create, enable, and support my leaders. And
that's the beautiful thing too, is because if everyone takes that opportunity when it comes up and leads whatever initiative, situation, matter, I've seen it. People that have worked, that I've worked with and worked quote unquote for me, and all of that, when they take the ball and they do something with it, I commend them, whether they screwed it up or not. If they screwed it up, but you say, okay, here's some suggestions on the next time how to do it, but you encourage them, because then all of a sudden that becomes part of their DNA, and they just start, okay, I'm gonna start doing this. They don't go around trying to shift gears to say, well, I'm
to be in charge.
Yeah.
Right. No one wants to be in charge.
No.
No one wants to manage. Ultimately, my leaders, they look at me and my job and they're like, thank God you're doing that. Like, I don't want to do that. And what's neat though is, like you said, if it comes into the DNA of the organization, here's a paradigm shocker for you. So say we're planning as a SEAL team, we're planning for a high risk mission. Who do you think's responsible for putting those plans together?
Well, you better have everybody involved, but that's my own slanted view on things.
Who's responsible? But who's responsible? Not everyone can hold responsibility.
That's
right?
true. Yeah.
Who holds the responsibility?
Well, it starts at the top. It's a leadership role that
Yeah,
but that's true. I can see where you're coming from.
So where we're going with this is we, at least in my platoons, my organizations, I put the most junior people responsible for planning each part of the mission. Now, ultimately, I held the ultimate responsibility for the plan, but I delegated that responsibility and it was accepted by the most junior people. And you ask, well, how the hell could they do that? They don't have any information. That's the whole point. Their job is to manage production of the plan, not do it. Their job is to find the right resources, to find the experts, to find the leaders, get the information, consolidate it, and put it in a format where everyone can understand it. Anyone can do that. So I was instilling all the way down into the lowest levels of my organization that management is not about doing. Management is about managing the doers, the experts, the leaders. And not only are we doing that, in the nature of doing that, I'm building, now I'm switching, I'm going to switch terms here, right? I'm building leaders every time I do that, because not only are they empowered, right? And guess who briefs the general or the admiral? The most junior guy, right? Talk about empowering someone to see that, to know that they are seen and held responsible to lead, that they have the ability to have the respect and authority of lead planner for, say, the air operations, that their chief that's senior to them by over 10 plus years is going to listen to them, is going to provide information for them, is going to help them, is going to lead them to an effective plan as the manager of the plan. It's this is what I mean by 180-degree difference from how it works in organizations. And no wonder this is how I kind of summarize it for us. Imagine if you were in an environment where your competition tries to kill you. Like, that's the job. Like, I love doing that in presentations, saying, who's got competition here? Everyone is saying, give me a name of someone. They'll give me a name of a company. You know anyone that works there? Well, yeah, there's a CEO. His name's Fred. Tomorrow morning when you get in your car, is Fred trying to kill you? Now, good sales reps will always say yes, which I love. But everyone else is like, no, not really. Well, imagine living in an environment where when I went to work, my competition was trying to kill me, literally kill me. And most of them had significantly more years of experience of doing it, and they're generally pretty damn good at it. On top of that, they only sent me to environments that were horrible. Like, they didn't send me to Hawaii. They sent me to really, really bad environments. And then this is the kicker. We only got missions that were impossible. What I mean by that is, since we were such a high value asset, meaning the average SEAL has over $1 million invested in them at the beginning. If you've got 10, 12 years of experience, you got $2.5 million invested in you. They won't risk us if a lower experienced unit, a lower priced unit, if you will, can do the mission. So if every other unit has to say impossible, 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 impossible to get to us. So my competition tries to kill me in the world's worst environments. Everyone said the mission's impossible except for us. And I have 100% success rate, meaning every time we committed to achieving an objective, we did. Tell me an organization that can say the same thing, that operates in that type of environment with that type of success rate. They don't. The reason why is their perspective on leadership, management, and following is backwards.
This has been amazing, and definitely a mind shift for me. And now, now I'll dig back and reevaluate, how, I go about, my business and look for those ways to really strengthen organizations. And it's awesome work that you're doing. So,
oh yeah, you're going to crush it. What's cool is now that you have this theme, right? And the things to remember. So here's I want to give you 4 statements to remember. The first statement is that my distinction, right? And for me, a distinction is a definition that's functional. It's not descriptive, but actual functional. So my distinction for management is managers create the environment that support leaders in making the right choices. What is a right choice? A right choice is a step towards our desired end state that's moral, ethical, and legal. So we're not just fuzzy right. There's a direct right choice. So once again, managers create an environment that support leaders in making the right choices. The distinction for leaders is that leaders create an environment that enable followers in making the right choices. Big difference between support and enable, right? Support is one step behind. Enable is in it. And then these last 2 phrases, what's the purpose of management and what's the purpose of leadership? The purpose of management is to create, enable, and support leaders through clear direction, resources, and a safety net. The purpose of a leader is to take effective action primarily, and through that evoke effective action in the followers. Like that's a $2,000 course in leadership.
I think you're pricing it too low, but no, that's
just the first. That's the tip of the iceberg. We got months of work after that. But if you take those 4 things, the distinctions of management and leadership, and the purpose of management and leadership, and then re-look at your organization and how people operate in it, you're going to see that most of the dysfunction in organization is where someone's in the wrong role, right? They're leading when they should be managing. They're managing when they should be following. They're following when they should be leading. They're leading when they should be following. And followers, what do followers do? Followers make the choices that produce the actions that drive the desired end state, right? So a follower is all about receiving from outside support, direction, power in order to make a decision and take an action. So when you start looking at any dysfunction of a team, every dysfunction of a team is due to someone being in the wrong role at the wrong time.
Yep, and when organizations go through that exercise and they identify that, then their organizations completely transform.
And it's a hell of a lot better place to work.
Absolutely. Larry, I've had a blast with this. You've definitely made my mind
Mel,
shift.
That's my joke. Yeah, I love it.
Mission accomplished, sir. So where can people find out more about you and the awesome work that you're doing?
Yeah, so we specifically stay under the radar. Part of the fact is we're still struggling our histories of counterintelligence and being a SEAL. So we're in the process of expanding our reach on social media and on the interwebs. But the best place if you've heard something that melted your mind, one of my favorite things in the world is to be able to help organizations bring this in, because it just permanently and positively changes people's lives, which, since I can't do that on the battlefield anymore through violence, being able to do it now through teaching and love it's like crack cocaine. It's amazing that I get to share and take all of the stuff that came from the darkness of violence and bad situations and produce nothing but the good stuff for organizations, people. So if any of this stuff resonates with you, it's our absolute pleasure to be able to teach it and bring it into organizations. The best way to get in touch with us is www.plan, PLAN-site, SIGHT.com /leaders, I think is a page we set up for you.
Awesome. And I'll definitely have that information in the show notes. Larry, once again, thank you. Well, first and foremost, thank you for your service. I should have led off with that, but I'll say it now. Not only the service you did protecting our country but the service that you're doing today and in the future. So I really appreciate
it. My response to that is thank you for being worth serving, because it's been my honor both to be a SEAL and to be able to serve this amazing country and the people in it. And if you guys didn't work in a way that deserved it, I wouldn't have sacrificed my life or time in trying to do it. So I put it right back at you. Thanks for being worth serving.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you so much. And until next time, everybody, be well. Hey, it's Michael again. Thank you for listening to the podcast. I really appreciate it. If you're like many people, you're dealing with some significant stress and possibly approaching burnout. I know how you feel. In 2009, my burnout led to a year of worst-case scenarios. I do not want that to happen to you. If you go to breakfastleadership.com, you can register for a free webinar on burnout prevention, as well as get a free checklist to have successful mornings. Start off each day the right way. Again, that's at breakfastleadership.com. Also, since you are a loyal podcast listener, I'm asking you to like, rate, and review my podcast on iTunes. I look at all the reviews and appreciate your comments, and it helps other potential listeners discover the content I have on the show. I appreciate you, and thanks again for listening.